Thank you very much, Randy. And let's go right back to our phone callers. Talk to Scott next in White Rock, British Columbia, Canada, listening on KARI. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Hank. I'm really happy to hear about your health. And I'd just like to say, I know Jesus mentioned something about even the elect can be deceived. And in that regard, I think about James Robinson having Creflo Dollar on his show, and how disturbed I was that Ruth Graham was giving credence to Joyce Meyer, and that really upset my heart. Anyway, so about that, but I wanted to say one positive thing. True unity is like the dew off of Mount Hermon's beard. Anyways, talk to you in a bit. Yeah, I'll listen to you now. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what the Psalms tell us. The dew that drips from. Yeah, so in terms of what's going on, and I think you're probably referring to Matthew chapter 24, where the Lord Jesus Christ says, "For then there will be great distress unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened." Well, this is in context, of course, the great Olivet Discourse, in which Jesus has just left the temple and he's walking away, and then his disciples call his attention to its buildings. And he says, "Do you see all these things? I tell you the truth, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." Well, the disciples at that point cannot imagine that Jesus is actually saying that the temple, this is the apex of their city. That temple is going to be manifestly destroyed, not just desecrated as it once was under Antiochus IV Epiphanes, but this time destroyed. And so, of course, the disciples want to know, when will this happen? What will be the sign of your coming in judgment and the end of the age of sacrifice in this temple? And so Jesus is starting to tell them now what exactly is going to go on, and ultimately ends up telling them about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem being so severe, so traumatic, that if the time of destruction was not shortened, even the elect would be affected. Well, he's not saying that they would give up their faith or they wouldn't be saved or anything like that, but he is using prophetic hyperbole to underscore the transcendent turbulence that will fall upon the glorious city. This was the apex of it's like if you lived in Washington, D.C., and you just walked among the monuments, or you saw the White House, and someone told you, within a generation, all of this is going to be destroyed. Well, you'd certainly want to find out, is this a true prophet or is this a false prophet? In this case, Jesus has already demonstrated that he is God, and therefore what he is saying will take place just as he said it would. What's interesting about this, a lot of skeptics have looked at this very passage. I think of Bart Ehrman, looked at this passage and have said that this passage is proof positive that Jesus Christ is a false apocalyptic prophet, because he said that this would be the end of the world. Now, they think, people like Bart Ehrman, think that this has to do with the end of the world when it doesn't at all. And the reason is they're reading the text in a wooden literalistic fashion as opposed to the way in which the text is intended to be read. So Jesus is using the language of the Old Testament prophets as part of the prophetic hyperbole. So the prophets would talk about the destruction of nations. Isaiah talking about the destruction of Babylon, for example, using the imagery of the sun, the moon, and the stars falling from the sky, the heavenly body shaken. Well, he's using that language and applying it now to the destruction of Jerusalem. But wooden literalists want to read this in a wooden literalist fashion and therefore say, well, this has to be the end of the world. Well, Jesus wasn't talking about the end of the world. He was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. And that's very clear in the context of the Olivet Discourse and in the context of the book of Revelation, which is John's expanded Olivet Discourse.